She leaned casually against the kitchen counter, as if discussing holiday foliage. "I've put you in a predicament," she stated, her arms crossed, head tilted, exuding an air of self-assuredness intended to impress me. "You have two options. Either agree that I wish to pursue something with him, or simply keep your distance while I do so." I remained silent, awaiting the punchline that never came, instead finding myself chuckling softly. Not because it was amusing, but because it was so incongruous with the woman I believed I'd married. "Repeat that," I inquired. She sighed, as if I were already being obstinate. "I don't want this to escalate into an argument, understand? I'm speaking truthfully. I'm attempting to deal with this maturely. I'm not secretively meeting him. I'm offering you a chance to grow alongside me." It was then that I understood she had practiced this speech, possibly in front of a mirror, perhaps even with an advisor. The phrase, "grow with me," was too eloquent, flawlessly delivered. I observed her as she spoke, her hands moving delicately, her voice softening like she was narrating a lullaby. "People in our age group are reconsidering the essence of marriage," she went on. "Monogamy isn't always innate. Aren't you aware of that?" I remained silent, merely leaning back in my chair, listening. My conversations with others, reading, and podcasts have aided me in comprehending that what I desire is not peculiar, it's not deceit, it's growth. Once more, another term, growth, had been refined until it signified nothing. I remained quiet, not because I lacked a response, but because I knew if I spoke at that moment, it wouldn't be composed. "Eric," she continued, her voice even softer now, "this isn't merely physical, Eric, and I share an intellectual and emotional connection. He perceives me in ways that well, it's not a criticism, but I have evolved." Dear friends, if you enjoy this story, please like and subscribe to our channel. It will motivate us to make more videos like this for you. I don't wish to constrict myself again to conform to our past selves. She hadn't uttered his name, but it was unmistakably Joan Avale, her superior she referred to. At 42, the founder of an urban tech firm with a minimalistic design and office tap for beer, the type who dressed in all birds, drank mushroom coffee, and addressed everyone as brother. He greeted you as if he were pledging to introduce you to God. I'd only met him fleetingly at their launch event. He bestowed upon me a smile typically reserved for valets or interns who spill coffee. "He makes me feel awakened," she murmured almost inaudibly. At that moment, I understood this wasn't mere impulse. It was a well-crafted narrative, carefully crafted over weeks. Each word chosen to cast her as the pioneer and me as the tablet of stone. Yet, I didn't contest. I didn't protest. I didn't shatter my glass like a stereotypical dramatist. I rose, exited the kitchen, moved down the corridor, and entered the bathroom, locking the door behind me. Gazing at my reflection in the mirror, I noticed that my face did not appear angry or hurt. Instead, it seemed determined. A change had occurred within me, then and there, a sensation similar to a switch being flipped, running up my spine. I would not grant her the response she desired. I wouldn't allow her to be the one guiding our moral compass. She perceived this as a negotiation. She was unaware that I had already decided. That evening, she returned to bed as if nothing happened, as though we'd merely debated rearranging furniture or changing cable providers. Even attempting to grab my hand, remnants of an old instinct. I permitted her to do so. I needed her to believe she retained control. To think she had ensnared me in a traditional marital trap, too passive, too stunned, too content to depart. She was mistaken. Everything was wrong. Over the ensuing days, she began treating me as if I were a piece of machinery in need of reprogramming. She shared articles, podcast snippets, and tales of successful open marriages. She claimed that if I truly loved her, we would grow together, and this situation could benefit us both rather than being a loss. I responded with nods, appropriate smiles, and frequent declarations that I'd give it thorough thought. All the while, I remained vigilant, observing not only her words, but also her actions. The crucial observation was that she no longer felt compelled to deceive or hide anything. She was openly pursuing this new path because in her mind, there was nothing improper about it. She saw herself as liberated, advanced, and enlightened, not as a cheater, but as someone expanding. Meanwhile, I was merely the outdated furnishing she hadn't yet discarded. However, that was imminent. In the meantime, I devised Plan C. She believed I was becoming more accepting. That made it simpler for her. As I presented a friendly demeanor, her self-assurance heightened. She became less guarded around me, ceasing to mention influential names or subtle hints. Timelines were presented as if they were part of our joint endeavor. I avoided confrontation, acting the part of the conflicted yet diligent man, listening attentively to her podcast suggestions, nodding as she discussed topics like sexual independence and traditional marriage being a patriarchal incarceration. I even feigned a few contemplative sighs, sufficiently to suggest the influence was taking hold, though it wasn't. In truth, while she was showering, I installed a discreet surveillance application on her phone. It was unobtrusive and silent, merely observing in the background. It didn't record anything illicit or track location in an unexplainable manner. It merely mirrored her calendar, text logs, and cloud-stored notes, and it provided me with everything I needed to know. To clarify, my actions were not driven by jealousy, not entirely so. I took action due to my desire for authenticity, not the sanitized story she presented. I yearned to unveil her true self once she believed she had overpowered me. What I discovered tightened my chest in an unsettling way, neither pain nor quite joy. Jonah, her superior, referred to her as Wife 2.0 inches in his phone contacts, while she labeled him as My Becoming. This revelation might have been the final straw. Yet, I sought more than resolution. I yearned for comprehension. Their messages were arrogant, self-absorbed, and philosophical, but beneath it all, there was a playful delight, like two children eating candy past bedtime. So, are we meeting again next week? Yes, he's becoming softer. I requested space for personal reflection, and remarkably, he agreed. Unbelievable, right? In her schedule for the upcoming week, I saw a name unfamiliar to me, RKM Guest House. Beneath it was a simple entry, temporary stay until circumstances change. That's when I realized she wasn't merely engaging in an affair. She was planning a move. A covert departure disguised as a temporary work assignment. No arguments, no official documentation, merely an imperceptible drift towards another person's bed and eventually their life. She was planning to depart without actually leaving. She intended to test drive both lives, choose the one that fit best, and return if she found the scenes unsatisfactory. She made her move on the coming Thursday. We were lounging on the couch when she casually disclosed she'd be temporarily collaborating with Jonah and some of the creative strategy team on a project off-site. It's immersive, she said, a sort of retreat reboot. As you know, startups work everyone around the clock, and occasionally they work without involving. She winked when she mentioned that last part. I feigned laughter. Sounds intriguing, I replied. Would you like assistance with packing? She seemed surprised for a moment, then smiled. That'd be really helpful. I assisted her in folding clothes, watched as she picked out casual yet alluring outfits. She added her preferred fragrance and seemed poised as if anticipating my response of resentment or critique. However, I merely smiled. You'll succeed, I said. Demonstrate true growth to them. She pressed a kiss to my cheek. That means a lot, she replied, indicating she believed I was pleased with her. That evening, post her departure, I opened my laptop. All the data were intact: the messages, the travel plans, the voice clips I'd recorded through the home assistant when she'd spoken during our supposed absence. Among them was a message from a familiar yet surprising voice, Jamie, her best friend. Initially, I thought it was just an attempt to alleviate tension, offering advice as she concocted the lie. But the tone, the amusement, the specifics revealed that it wasn't so. Are you sure he fell for it? Jamie inquired. Completely, my wife replied. I feel like I'm ablaze at this moment, like I'm living for myself. You are, aren't you? By the way, Jonah's infatuated, as you well know. Ah, I realize. After all, you would be aware, wouldn't you? Jamie responded. Greetings, we each grow in distinct paths. I found myself observing a waveform replay, learning that her confidante shared the same lover as Jonah. His world was self-contained, where loyalty was a facade and affection was a collective effort. This wasn't merely infidelity, it was a web. Unmoved by anger or tears or liquor or outbursts, I instead secured all data, arranged it neatly, labeled it. Subsequently, I composed a brief, courteous message to the one individual who held significance in this chaos, Jonah's spouse. I didn't include files at once. Rather, I merely presented myself, mentioned a few coinciding dates, and informed her of some potentially useful information in my possession. Then I clicked send, closed the laptop, and retired for the night. That night, I slept more peacefully than I had in months, for now I held power. By Friday morning, her side of the closet exhibited a cleaner appearance. Not vacant, but more streamlined. A touch more selective, as if she'd chosen her favorites and discarded the rest casually. Reminiscent of the manner in which individuals tidy their workstations when uncertain about returning, she left a note on the bathroom mirror before departing for a few days. Without warning. No need to keep awake. No cause for worry. I adore you. Yet, differently now. Again, the same tactfully weaponized words surfaced. Not malicious, not blunt, just ambiguous enough to evade responsibility. Everything seemed justified by her now. It wasn't infidelity. It was liberation, not abandonment, merely a shift. However, she was oblivious to the fact that I no longer served as her safety net. She believed she was walking a tightrope between two possibilities. She failed to notice that option 3 was already in motion. The initial action wasn't dramatic. It wasn't even noisy. It was pragmatic. I retrieved 3 large moving boxes, clearly labeled them: wardrobe, desk, books. I filled them meticulously, not out of retribution, merely for clarity. Nothing destroyed, nothing stolen, just packed. Her mail was sorted and kept separate. Her preferred coffee mug was washed and wrapped. Photographs from the corridor were moved into a file and handled carefully. I made subtle changes, enough to make her sense it when she returned, a faint rumble in the heart that signals the ending of a chapter, although one may not be fully aware. Then I arranged a meeting with the real estate agent, discreetly, merely to explore possibilities. It wasn't a warning. It wasn't an eviction notice. I was merely verifying if the ground she believed to be solid had already begun to sway. In the meantime, Jonah's wife replied. Her response was concise, composed, unusually calm. Thank you for this. You're not unique in your knowledge. You won't be remembered as a lone wolf, but you could be the last to remain silent. We had a 15-minute conversation later that evening. No tears, no emotional upheavals. Just 2 individuals exchanging information and timelines like we were going over financial reports. She had been keeping tabs on his infidelities for years, never having concrete names. I provided her with some. Specifically 2, if you include Jamie. She inquired about one matter towards the end. Are you still planning to save it? After pondering for a while, I replied negatively. I wanted her to witness the blaze she ignited from afar. She didn't reply, merely stating that she had what she needed, and ended the call. At home, I remained silent, avoided talking to friends, refrained from posting cryptic updates or seeking advice. Instead, I observed the hours ticking by, tracking her phone security. She messaged me once, inquiring if I was contemplating and letting go of the old ways. Unknown to her, I had already let go of her long ago. Upon her return, she wouldn't find the man she departed from but a stranger. Her arrangement with Jonah. It wasn't merely a fantasy anymore. It was a trace, a trail, a receding roadmap of deceit and betrayal. The best part? She didn't anticipate it coming. Not because I was cunning, but because she didn't think I was capable. She believed she had taken my backbone when she took my faith. What she actually took was my silence. And silence can be amusing in its own way. It can seem like submission. Peaceful before action, it was. The eve prior to her return, I filled a glass and stood by the window, observing the neighborhood quieten. I wasn't filled with anger or pieces or envy. I felt clear. For the first time in months, I comprehended precisely what I had to do, and significantly, what I no longer needed to endure. The facade was dissolved. All that remained was for her to re-enter the chaos she created, believing she still held ownership. Let her view the photographs we're missing. Let her see the boxes neatly arranged in the hallway. Let her see my stance had altered. My gaze. My voice. Let her witness that the regulations were altered now. Let her attempt to bargain when choice 3 was already finalized, inscribed, and ready at the entrance. She walked in as if still residing here. A rolling suitcase following her, an oversized cardigan around her shoulders, hair swept back like she'd just emerged from some breezy urban hideaway. She carried an unnatural stillness with her, akin to one who cheats but convinces oneself it serves a higher purpose. I heard the door creak open from above. I didn't hasten down. I wanted her to acquaint herself with the house before laying eyes on me. The empty photo frames, packed mementos, and the noticeable void of shared spaces were apparent. She acknowledged. "Babe," she called out, her tone still so carefree, as if we were married in a foreign tongue, requiring merely some time to reset. Upon entering the room, she offered me a half-hearted smile. It failed to touch her eyes, likely unable to do so. "I'm home," she said. I gazed at her for a moment before responding. "No, you're visiting." Her gaze shifted when I mentioned the boxes. "You'll find everything clearly labeled. If anything's amiss, inform me." I kept the costly shoes and redemptive journals apart, should you desire to venture elsewhere. It was then her expression altered. Not anger, not remorse, but bewilderment. "Are you being sincere?" she inquired. "Indeed, I am. You mentioned that you were contemplating." "That was correct," I interjected. "Now I've completed my thoughts." She assumed a similar posture as she had in the kitchen that day, attempting to re-establish authority through her stance. However, it no longer held its previous effect. "Eric," she said, moving closer and softening her tone, reminiscent of soothing a child. "I believed we were addressing this issue. I thought you comprehended my requirements." I retreated. "You can't redefine this as a joint venture," I stated. "You abandoned me to sleep with your superior, calling it progress. You deceived me about your destination, your companion, and the duration of your absence. That's not development. It's a fee for deceit." Her jaw clenched. "I didn't lie. You referred to it as a project, a retreat, an immersion for team building. I observed you packing lingerie and perfume for your strategic team. Let's be honest." She stumbled. "All right. Perhaps I wasn't completely truthful, but I didn't stray." "I never claimed to be open," I retorted sharply. "That's not the same thing." Her voice escalated. "You should have expressed your discomfort." "I didn't have to," I replied. "You were aware. You chose to ignore it instead, and that hurt more than expected." She looked down, her eyes blinking rapidly, breathing heavily as if attempting to compose herself. She started. "I didn't intend to hurt you," she whispered softly. "But I did. Not just with him, but also in other ways." She stiffened at my words. "You truly believe you were the only one involved?" I questioned. "Don't you think I wouldn't have noticed your calls to Jamie? Or the way you began to strategize with her? The way you two seemed to rehearse for a lecture on betrayal?" Her eyes widened in shock. "Did you listen to—" "Every single word. Every self-assured sentence, including the part where Jonah mentioned he admired my domesticity, suggesting I wouldn't retaliate." She paled, and guilt, arriving too late and too small, was evident on her face. "Here's a rephrased version of your text. And here's the amusing twist to it all," I pointed out. "You weren't even monogamous in your infidelities. Instead, you were one of his numerous spiritual companions. Guess who else was sharing his bed?" She remained silent. "Jamie," I disclosed. That shattered her. She retreated a step. "No, no, she wouldn't," she assured me. "She told you what she felt necessary for your continued usefulness. Just like you did, she played you." She sat down. She could no longer sustain herself. Her hands were now trembling. "Eric, don't," I interjected. "You don't have the right to explain. You made your choices. Now you gather your belongings and your silence." She swiped at her eyes. "Could we discuss this tomorrow? Not like this, please." "Could we?" I replied. "Perhaps Jonah's wife has already initiated the discussion for us." Her head snapped up. What? I answered simply. She knows everything. You aren't unique in that regard. Perhaps she was left unaware of your intentions. Her lips quivered. You've told her, you said? I didn't tell her, I corrected. I demonstrated instead. For the first time, she had no response. A void of sound and a distant gaze were all that met my words. I allowed the moment to linger before turning, walking towards the door, and flinging it wide open. You wanted options, I said. This one is for you. I didn't hear from her for a week. No phone calls, no messages. Just silence. I made no efforts to pursue her. I didn't need to. That night, she gathered her belongings and departed, leaving the rest behind. I kept them confined in the guest room, neatly packaged and undisturbed. The house seemed calmer without her presence. More tranquil, yet not desolate. Simply truthful. A week later, a reckoning arrived. An unforeseen text from her sister inviting me to discuss at her parents' home. The tone was friendly, polite, but I could sense the underlying message. They were preparing their defense. I almost declined the invitation. Almost. Yet, an inner voice urged me forward. They aren't concerned. It's about me. Her parents reside a short drive away and inhabit one of those precisely planned cul-de-sacs, complete with matching mailboxes and in Hoa prioritizing lawn symmetry over human kindness. Upon arrival, the entire family was present: mom, dad, sister, and of course her. She appeared smaller, more vulnerable. Not fractured but devoid of the borrowed assurance she once donned like protection. Her father initiated the conversation. We simply desire comprehension, he said. Given the rumors, you've left her without warning. Her mother concurred with a nod. Marriage is labor. It's not a document discarded when challenges arise. And then her sister chimed in, her voice dripping with politely patronizing condescension. You've always been traditional, Eric. But perhaps if you had listened more, encouraged her growth, things wouldn't have escalated so greatly. I remained silent, absorbing their instantaneous rewriting of events. Subsequently, I drew my phone from my pocket. I didn't play any recordings, neither showed screenshots nor videos. It wasn't necessary. Instead, I opened a folder of photographs I had stealthily taken over the past few months. One image was of her standing at the front door with a suitcase, grinning while texting Jonah. Another was her calendar with RKM Guest House emphasized and color-coded. There was also a photo of a note she left behind, saying, I love you, but differently now. I then read aloud a message she sent to Jamie in my Notes app. He's either too weak to stop me or too loyal to leave. Either way, this is liberty. I put down the phone. I didn't catch her off guard, I said. She had been meticulously planning her vanishing act while still enjoying its perks. She didn't seek empathy. She asked for permission to embarrass me elegantly. Her father coughed. People often make mistakes. I interjected. She didn't accidentally fall into another man's bed. She arranged a schedule, secured accommodation, purchased intimate garments, enlisted her closest friend, spent countless messages discussing the thrill of rebranding hurt as self-care. I slightly leaned forward, and she now regrets it due to the man she risked everything for also being with the friend she considered most trustworthy. Her fortress stood on shaky ground, and I chose not to perish so she could delude herself into believing it was a spa. The room grew silent. Her mother folded her arms. So you've made your decision. I looked at my spouse. She didn't converse, didn't beg. She merely stared at the ground, tears accumulating yet never spilling. Yes, I replied, I'm finished with being the antagonist in a tale I didn't compose. I'm done bearing the burden while everyone else explores their desired identities. I rose. You sought comprehension. Now you have it. Then I departed. As I neared the door, her sibling called after me, tone subdued. Eric, didn't you truly love her? I halted, fingers on the doorknob. I followed through, I admitted, yet she compelled me to opt between divulging her presence or observing her sleep beside another. I briefly glanced back, merely to conclude my words. Thus, I selected option 3. I instructed her to prepare for departure prior to disrupting his arrogant domain. With that declaration, I departed, not only from the room, but also from the entire narrative.